Ethan was a simple human mechanic living on the edge of the alien city. His workshop was small, filled with old tools and the smell of metal and oil. He fixed everything from broken hoverbikes to old farming bots, and most days passed without anything exciting, but that night was different. It was late. The streets outside were almost empty. The alien city's neon lights flickered in the distance. Ethan was about to close his shop when he heard a faint sound. It was not the usual hum of a hoverbike or the chatter of night traders. It was soft, weak, and filled with pain. He froze, listening carefully. The sound came again, a low whimper, almost like a wounded animal. Ethan stepped outside. The cold air hit his face. He looked around the dark alley beside his shop, and there it was, a small creature lying against the wall. Its fur matted with dust and tiny cuts across its body. Its large silver eyes stared at him, trembling. Ethan's first thought was that it was some kind of stray alien pet. But there was something unusual about it. Its body gave off a faint glow, almost like moonlight. And its breathing was shallow. The sight stirred something inside him. Without thinking, he knelt down. "Hey, easy now. I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered. The creature tried to move, but its leg twisted awkwardly, and it whimpered. Again, Ethan carefully slid his hands under it, surprised by how light it was. He carried it into the workshop, closing the door behind him. He placed it gently on his work table, under the bright lamp. He could see the injuries better. A deep cut on the side, bruises on its legs, and strange burn marks. It had clearly been running from something or someone. Ethan fetched his first aid kit. Using clean cloth to wipe away the dirt, the creature didn't resist. It just watched him with those big silver eyes, as if trying to understand why a human would help. While Ethan worked, a strange thing happened. When his hand brushed over the creature's fur, a pulse of soft blue light spread across its body. For a second, Ethan pulled his hand back, startled. Then he shrugged, thinking it was just some natural defense. "You're a strange little thing, aren't you?" he said quietly. Outside, footsteps echoed in the alley. Ethan didn't notice. But if he had looked out the window, he would have seen two tall alien guards scanning the street with glowing devices. They were muttering to each other in a language Ethan couldn't understand. One of them checked a hologram image. It showed the exact same creature now sitting on Ethan's table. After cleaning the wounds, Ethan gave it a bowl of water. It drank slowly, never taking its eyes off him. "You must be someone's pet," he murmured. "Probably expensive, too." He thought about taking it to the local lost and found center. But something in his gut told him that wasn't a good idea. He had seen the way certain owners treated animals in this city. The creature finished drinking and curled up on the corner of the work table, its faint glow lighting the tools around it. Ethan turned off the main lights, leaving only the soft lamp on. Outside, the footsteps faded. The city returned to its quiet hum. As Ethan locked the door and prepared to sleep in the back room, he couldn't shake the feeling that this little thing had more to it than he understood. Something about its glow, its eyes, and the strange calm it brought made him curious. He promised himself he would figure it out in the morning. But while he slept, the city was not at rest. In the high towers of the alien palace, a young princess stood on her balcony, her golden eyes blazing with anger. Below her, soldiers knelt, waiting for orders. "Find Laura," she commanded. "Search every street, every corner, and if you find the thief, bring them to me alive." The name Laura was whispered across the palace halls like a sacred word. She was no ordinary pet. She was the royal companion of the princess, trained since birth, bonded through a rare ancient ritual. Losing her was a crime punishable by exile or death. But Ethan knew none of this in his small workshop. The creature Laura slept peacefully, unaware of the chaos her disappearance had caused. Her glowing mark faintly pulsed under her fur, a royal crest known across the galaxy, but in Ethan's mind, She was just an injured stray who needed help. He had no idea that by morning, the search for her would bring the palace guards right to his door, and his quiet life would be over forever. The morning came with the usual hum of the alien city. Ethan yawned as he stepped out of his small sleeping room. The creature was still there on the work table. Curled into a small ball of glowing fur, it opened its silver eyes when he approached, letting out a soft sound that was somewhere between a purr and a hum. Ethan smiled without realizing he was smiling. He poured himself some water and looked at the creature again. It looked much better than last night. The wound was cleaned and its breathing was steady. He thought about going out to buy some food for it. Maybe something soft and easy to chew. As he opened the front door of the workshop, a tall alien stood just a few steps away. The stranger's skin shimmered like green glass, and his eyes shifted colors slowly. He wore simple trader clothes, but there was something sharp in the way he looked around. Ethan greeted him politely. The alien stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His gaze swept the shop. His eyes froze on the work table. Ethan glanced back and saw the creature watching the visitor quietly. The alien's pupils widened. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Do you know what you have there, human?" he asked. Ethan chuckled. "Just a stray that wandered in last night. Injured, I patched it up." The alien didn't smile. He looked at the door, then at Ethan. "You need to get rid of it." The words were blunt. Ethan frowned. "It's hurt. I can't just throw it back outside." The alien leaned closer. "That is no common creature. Keep it, and you will bring trouble to your door." Without another word, he turned and left. Disappearing into the crowd outside, Ethan stood still for a moment, his mind replaying the stranger's tone. There had been no kindness in his voice, only warning. He looked at the creature again. It tilted its head, unaware of the tension. Ethan muttered to himself, "What kind of trouble could you cause?" The day went on as usual. Ethan worked on repairing a hoverbike for a regular customer. But he noticed something strange. More street patrols were moving through the area. Alien guards in dark armor, carrying scanning devices. They walked past the shop slowly, their eyes sharp. One of them even paused at the doorway before moving on. Ethan decided to keep the creature out of sight. He built a small bed for it under his workbench, covering the space with a blanket. The creature seemed to understand and stayed there quietly. Every time a patrol passed, Ethan's chest tightened a little more. By evening, the streets grew quieter, but the unease in the air only deepened. Ethan closed early. He was cleaning his tools when the shop's front bell rang. An elderly alien woman stood there, her arms full of herbs. She sold healing plants and often visited to chat. She smiled at Ethan, but then her gaze moved to the workbench. When she saw the faint blue glow under it, her smile faded. She set down her basket and whispered, "Child, where did you find that?" Ethan hesitated. "It was injured in the alley. She shook her head quickly, cutting him off. "No, you do not understand. That is marked. It belongs to the palace." Ethan blinked. "The palace?" The old woman's voice dropped even lower. "Not just the palace, to the princess herself." Ethan's mouth went dry. "You mean she held up her hand?" "Say no more. If the guards find it here, they will take you too." Before Ethan could ask anything else, she gathered her herbs and hurried out, leaving him standing in silence. He felt the weight of the words she had left behind. The princess, the palace. This creature was not just red, was dangerous to be near. He went to the workbench. Pulling back the blanket, the creature looked up at him with calm eyes. Its fur glowed faintly, and under the glow, Ethan noticed something he hadn't before. A small crest marked into its skin, a design that looked like a crown surrounded by stars. It was elegant, perfect, and it matched the royal emblems he had seen on palace banners. A slow, uneasy breath left him the alien merchant's warning. The old woman's fear, the extra patrols, it was all connected. He rubbed his face, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Night fell, and Ethan decided to sleep lightly, leaving a small light on. The city outside seemed restless. Distant noises of shouts and movement echoed in the streets. The creature stayed close to him now, curling near his bed, almost as if it felt safer by his side. But deep in the city's high walls, the princess paced her chambers, her patience thin. She had sent out her best trackers. And still, there was no sign of Laura. The more time passed, the more she imagined her beloved companion hurt or frightened. Her anger grew like a storm. She swore to herself that whoever had taken Laura would regret it. In his small shop, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every small sound outside made his muscles tense. He didn't know whether to take the creature far away or keep it hidden. But one thing was clear: someone out there was looking for it, and if they found it here, his life might be over. The faint hum of the city was interrupted by the sound of heavy boots in the street. Coming closer, stopping, Ethan's eyes shot open. Someone was outside his door. The knock came hard and fast, the kind of knock that didn't wait for an answer. Ethan froze where he stood. The creature stirred under the workbench, its silver eyes opening wide. Another knock followed. Louder this time, and then a deep voice called out, "Open up, City Patrol." Ethan's heartbeat thudded in his ears. He glanced at the blanket covering the creature, making sure not even a glow escaped. Slowly, he walked to the door, his hands cold when he opened it. Two alien guards stood there, their armor dark and heavy, their eyes scanning him like he was already guilty of something. "We're searching for stolen property," one of them said, his voice sharp. "A rare animal, small fur that glows." Answers to the name Laura. Ethan tried to keep his face calm. "Haven't seen anything like that?" The guard's eyes narrowed, stepping forward as if to push past him. Ethan raised a hand. "You can look, but I'm busy with repairs." The guards stepped inside, their boots heavy against the floor. One of them moved toward the workbench. Ethan's breath caught, his body tense. The creature didn't move, didn't make a sound. It stayed perfectly still under the blanket. The guard bent down, lifted the edge slightly. But at that moment, a loud crash came from outside in the street. Someone shouting. The second guard called to his partner, "We're needed." They dropped the blanket and walked quickly out, disappearing into the night. Ethan closed the door and locked it, leaning against it with a shaky breath. He pulled the blanket back. The creature blinked at him as if nothing had happened. "You're going to get me killed," he whispered. But he still reached out to gently stroke its fur. Hours later, the city had grown quieter. But Ethan's nerves stayed on edge. Every sound outside made him glance at the door. His mind was spinning with questions. Why would the palace send guards into the lower districts? What made this creature so important? And what would they do to someone who had it? The creature seemed to sense his unease. It climbed onto his lap while he sat at his work table, its glow warm against his chest. For a brief moment, the fear eased. Ethan's eyes grew heavy, and he drifted into a restless sleep. When morning came, sunlight poured through the dusty windows. Ethan stretched, thinking maybe he could keep things quiet for another day. But fate had other plans. A shadow fell across the doorway, and when Ethan looked up, a figure was standing there. It was a woman, at least. She looked like one at first glance. Her skin shimmered faintly like polished stone, her eyes golden and sharp. She wore a traveler's cloak that hid most of her features. But there was a presence about her, something that made the air feel heavier. She stepped inside without waiting for permission, her gaze sweeping the shop, landing finally on the creature, which had climbed onto the counter. The creature's eyes lit up. It gave a small sound of recognition, leaping straight into her arms. Ethan's mouth went dry. The way the creature curled against her, the way her expression softened. It was clear they knew each other. The woman looked at Ethan. "You're the one who helped her," she said, her voice low but firm. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded slowly. "I found her hurt." I didn't know he stopped as the cloak slipped from her shoulders, revealing intricate silver armor beneath delicate yet strong patterns. Carved into the plates like the markings on palace gates, it was a style he had seen only from a distance. In that moment, Ethan realized exactly who she was. The golden eyes, the crest on her armor, the air of authority, this was the princess herself before he could say anything. The front door burst open again, armed guards rushing in, their weapons raised and aimed directly at Ethan. The princess turned sharply, raising her hand. "Stand down," she ordered, her voice ringing with command. The guards froze mid-step, glancing between her and Ethan, confusion flickering in their eyes. "He's under my protection," she added. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. The weight of the moment pressing against him, the guards lowered their weapons. But the tension in the air didn't fade. The princess stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "You've put yourself in danger, human," she said. "Do you understand what you've been keeping here?" Ethan swallowed, only that she needed help. The princess studied him for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Then perhaps you're not like the others," she murmured. Outside, the street was already gathering attention, people peering. In whispering, news of the princess in the lower city would spread quickly, and with it, questions about the human who had her royal companion. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the quiet life he had built here was already gone, replaced by something larger, something dangerous, and something he couldn't walk away from now. The princess did not waste time. She told Ethan to gather whatever he needed. Her tone left no room for questions. The creature lurer was now resting in her arms, looking more at peace than Ethan had ever seen her outside the shop. The guards kept the curious crowd from getting closer, their faces cold and unreadable. Ethan moved around his workshop quickly, grabbing his tool belt, a small pack of essentials, and locking the door behind him. He glanced once at the place he had called home for years. Knowing he might never see it again, the princess stepped into the street, her presence parting the crowd without a single word. The guards formed a circle around them as they walked away to a waiting transport. The transport was sleek, black, and nothing like the battered vehicles in the lower districts. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of polished metal. Ethan sat across from the princess, the hum of the engines filling the silence. He wanted to ask her why she had come, herself, why she was protecting him, but her gaze was fixed on Laura, her hand gently stroking the creature's fur. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but carrying an edge. "Do you know how many would kill to possess her?" Ethan shook his head. "I just saw someone hurt. I helped." The princess studied him for a moment. Most would have sold her before the night was over. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not who I am." The transport rose above the crowded streets, passing towers of glass and steel, climbing higher until the palace came into view. A sprawling fortress of white stone and shimmering spires. Ethan had seen it from afar, but up close it seemed impossibly large. Guarded by layers of gates and soldiers, the moment they landed, the princess stepped out with Laura still in her arms. Inside the palace walls, everything gleamed. Polished floors reflected the light of hanging crystal lanterns. Servants bowed as the princess passed, their eyes flicking briefly to Ethan. Some with curiosity, others with suspicion. The air felt heavier here, every movement watched, every word carrying weight. The princess led him to a quiet chamber, richly decorated with silken curtains and carved furniture. She set Laura down on a cushioned bed near the window. The creature immediately curled up, her glow faint but steady. Ethan stood awkwardly near the doorway, feeling like he didn't belong. "You are safe here," the princess said, turning toward him for now. The last two words settled heavily in the air. Ethan frowned. Safe from what, exactly? She stepped closer, her golden eyes sharp from those who took her. From those who would see me weakened. Her words made little sense, but Ethan could feel there was more beneath them. The princess seemed to weigh her thoughts before speaking. "Again, Laura is not only my companion, she is a symbol of the royal bond, a tradition that cannot be broken. When she disappeared, it was not by chance." Ethan felt the meaning sink in. Someone had taken Laura on purpose, not just to hurt her, but to strike at the princess herself. He crossed his arms. "Then why bring me here?" "I'm no soldier." The princess's lips curved in a faint, unreadable smile. "No, but you have already proven you can keep her safe. And you are not tied to the palace, which means you can go places my guards cannot." Before Ethan could respond, the door opened and a tall alien in dark robes entered. His eyes like thin slits, he bowed to the princess. But his gaze lingered on Ethan too long. "Your Highness, some of the council are concerned about your decision to bring an outsider into the palace." She didn't look away from Ethan as she replied. "They will accept it." The robed alien bowed again, but the faint curl of his mouth carried something that made Ethan uneasy. When he left, Ethan exhaled slowly. "I'm starting to think being here is more dangerous than staying in my shop." The princess walked to the window, her voice calm. "Danger is everywhere now. But here, at least, you are under my watch." As the sun dipped behind the palace walls, the chamber grew dim. Soft light from Laura's glow casting shadows across the floor. Ethan sat on a low chair, still trying to process how quickly his life had changed. He wondered if the merchant and the old woman who had warned him earlier had known just how deep the trouble went. That night, as the palace fell into quiet, Ethan tried to sleep on the soft bed provided for him. But unease kept him awake, somewhere in the halls beyond his room. Footsteps echoed, stopping near his door. The faint sound of voices whispered in a language he didn't understand. The voices faded after a while, but Ethan's heart didn't. Slow, across the room, Laura stirred in her sleep, her glow brightening for a moment before fading again, and in that moment, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He wasn't just a guest here. He was a piece in a game he didn't understand yet. And sooner or later, someone would try to move him. The morning inside the palace felt different from the lower city. There was no smell of oil or metal, only the faint scent of flowers from the gardens beyond the tall windows. Ethan woke to the sound of soft chimes, unsure if it was a signal or just part of the palace's morning routine. Laura was already awake, sitting by the window, her silver eyes watching the sunlight spill across the floor. Ethan stood and stretched, the events of the past 2 days pressing heavy on his mind. Before he could gather his thoughts, a servant entered, bowing quickly and placing a tray of food on the low table. The servant's eyes darted to Ethan, then to Laura, before hurrying out without a word. Moments later, the princess arrived, her golden eyes sharp yet calm. She wore lighter armor today, silver plates over deep blue fabric. She walked straight to Laura, kneeling to stroke her fur. "She's stronger now," the princess said softly. Ethan nodded. "She's tough," he replied, without warning. The princess straightened and faced him. "I have something to ask of you." Ethan tensed, unsure where this was going. "Last night, I received word." She continued. "The ones who took Laura before are still in the city, and they are planning to strike again." Ethan frowned. "So you want me to?" "What?" "Be bait." Her expression didn't change. "Not bait," she said. "A shadow. Someone who can move unnoticed." Ethan shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things." "I'm not." She cut him off with a steady voice. "You fixed her, didn't you?" That's why I'm asking you now." Before Ethan could argue, the door opened again, and one of the guards stepped in, his armor bearing a fresh scratch across the chest plate. "Your Highness, the council wants you." "In the meeting chamber, it's urgent." The princess nodded. But before leaving, she turned to Ethan. "Stay in this room until I return, and keep her close." Ethan watched her leave, the door shutting behind her. He sat at the table, eating slowly, but his eyes kept drifting to the window. The palace. Gardens stretched out beyond, peaceful at first glance. But there were guards stationed at every turn, their movements sharp. Hours passed. The princess did not return, and the silence of the room began to feel heavier. Laura shifted uncomfortably, her ears twitching as if she heard something Ethan couldn't. Then he heard it too, a faint metallic click near the door. His muscles tensed, the lock turned slowly. The door opened just enough for a figure to slip inside. It wasn't a guard. This person was dressed in black from head to toe, their face hidden. They moved quickly toward Luar. Ethan stood instantly. Stepping between them and the creature, "Not a chance," he said. The intruder lunged. But Ethan grabbed a chair and swung it hard. The wood cracked against the figure's arm. They staggered back, a small blade flashing in their hand. Laura darted under the bed, her glow dimming. The intruder hissed something in a sharp alien language. Ethan grabbed a heavy wrench from his pack. His grip tight, they circled each other for a moment before the intruder rushed forward again. This time Ethan sidestepped, slamming the wrench into their side. The figure stumbled, and Ethan shoved them toward the door. They hit the wall, then turned and fled, disappearing down the hall without a sound. Ethan stood breathing hard, the wrench still in his hand. Guards arrived seconds later, drawn by the commotion. Their eyes scanned the room. One of them knelt to check the door. They knew exactly where to go. The guard muttered. Ethan's voice was firm. They came for her. When the princess returned, her expression darkened at the news. She sent orders for a lockdown, more guards patrolling the halls. She looked at Ethan, her tone serious. "This proves what I feared. Someone inside these walls wants her gone." Ethan didn't like the weight in her voice. "And you still think I should be here?" he asked. She met his gaze. "I think you're the only one I can trust right now." That truth settled in like a stone in his chest. That night, the palace was on high alert. Guards moved in pairs, and the halls were filled with the hum of distant voices. Ethan stayed near Laura, refusing to let her out of his sight. But as he sat there in the dim light, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Someone had tried once, and they would try again. He glanced at the door, then at the window, wondering if the next danger would come from outside or from within. The night passed without rest. Ethan sat awake in the chair, his eyes heavy, but his mind refusing to let him sleep. Every creak of the palace walls, every distant footstep made him grip the wrench tighter. Laura stayed close, sometimes curling against his leg, sometimes pacing the room with restless energy. At dawn, the princess returned, her armor showing fresh scuffs as if she had been training or fighting since before sunrise. She looked at Ethan, then at Laura, and spoke with a quiet urgency. "It's not safe here anymore. Whoever is behind this has allies inside the palace, and they will not stop." Ethan leaned forward. "Then what's your plan?" She took a step closer, her voice dropping even lower. "We move her out, far from here. Before they can make another attempt." Ethan's brow furrowed. "We?" The princess gave a slight nod. "I can't go myself. It would be too obvious, but you can. No one will expect a human to carry a royal companion through the city unnoticed." Ethan glanced at Laura, who tilted her head as if she understood. "And if I'm caught?" he asked. The princess didn't blink. "Then you run, and you don't stop until you reach the safe house." Within an hour, they had a plan. Ethan would leave through the lower servant gates dressed as a palace courier. Laura would be hidden inside a reinforced satchel with a soft glow shield to mask her light. He would take the old trade route through the industrial district, avoiding the main streets where patrols were heaviest. The disguise was simple plain brown clothes, a hood, and a metal crate strapped across his back. From the outside, it looked like a delivery case, but inside was Laura, curled in silence. The princess gave Ethan a small data chip before he left. "Show this to the man at the safe house. His name is Corin. He owes me his life." Ethan nodded, pulling the hood low over his face as he stepped into the morning light. The air outside the palace felt sharper, the streets busier. He moved with the flow of workers heading toward the factories, keeping his pace steady. The city seemed unaware of the secret he carried. But his eyes kept scanning for danger. Halfway through the route, he noticed them two figures following at a distance. Their movements too careful, too deliberate. Ethan turned down a narrow alley, hoping to lose them, but when he glanced back, they were still there. Closer now. His heart thudded. He quickened his pace. Weaving through the maze of backstreets, the sound of footsteps behind him growing louder. Then one of the pursuers called out in a sharp alien tongue, the kind of voice that meant they weren't asking, they were ordering. Ethan didn't slow. A shadow moved ahead, blocking the path. The second figure stepped out from the other side, trapping him in the alley. Both of them carried short stun rods that crackled with energy. One pointed at him, handed over, "Human, and maybe we won't drag you back broken." Ethan tightened his grip on the straps of the crate. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice betrayed the tension in his chest. The nearest one stepped forward, swinging the stun rod in a wide arc. Ethan ducked and drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest, the impact sending them stumbling back. The second one lunged, catching Ethan's arm with the rod. Pain flared through him, but he twisted, slamming the crate's corner into the attacker's ribs. They gasped, dropping the rod. Ethan didn't wait. He shoved past them and ran, his legs burning, the shouts of pursuit echoing behind him. He ducked into a side door of an abandoned warehouse, the air inside thick with dust. He crouched behind a stack of rusted machinery, his breath ragged. The sound of footsteps outside faded, replaced by silence. Slowly, he lifted the crate lid just enough to see Laura's eyes watching him, calm despite the chaos. "We're almost there," he whispered. Minutes later, he slipped out the back of the warehouse and followed a forgotten rail line toward the outskirts. The industrial noise gave way to quieter streets, and soon he reached a small metal building with a single red lantern hanging by the door. He knocked twice, paused, then knocked once more. The door opened to reveal a broad-shouldered alien with deep scars across his jaw. His eyes narrowed as they fell on Ethan. "You're late," he said. Ethan pulled the data chip from his pocket and handed it over. Corin scanned it, then stepped aside. "Get in, quickly." Inside, the safe house was dim and bare, but secure. Corin locked the door behind them. Ethan set the crate down and let Leora step out, her glow filling the room softly. Corin's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing, only nodding once. "You did well bringing her here?" Ethan slumped into a chair, his muscles aching. "What now?" he asked. Corin glanced toward the door, his voice low. "Now you wait. The princess will send word when it's safe." If it's ever safe. Ethan didn't like the way he said that. But he knew one thing: this wasn't over, and whoever had sent those pursuers wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. The safe house felt still, but Ethan's nerves didn't let him rest. Corin moved around the small space with quiet efficiency, checking locks, peering through the narrow windows, and keeping a blaster close at hand. Laura sat near Ethan, her glow faint but steady, her silver eyes following every movement in the room. Hours passed, no word from the princess, no signal. Ethan's thoughts kept circling. Who was really behind all this? And how far would they go to get to Lura? Corin seemed to sense his unease. "You should know something," he said in a low voice, "if they took her again. It wouldn't just be about hurting the princess. It would be about replacing her." Ethan frowned. Replacing. Corin nodded. In her culture, the royal bond with a companion like Lura is more than symbolic. It's proof of her right to rule. Without Lura, the council could call her unfit. Someone else could take the throne. Ethan felt the weight of that truth settle in. This wasn't just about a pet, it was about power. Before he could respond, the floor vibrated faintly, a low hum growing into a sharper sound. Corin moved to the window, his jaw tightening. "They found us," he said. Ethan stood, gripping his wrench again. "How?" Corin didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. Someone had betrayed their location. The first blast hit the side of the building, shaking the walls, dust falling from the ceiling. Corin shouted, "Back room, now!" Ethan scooped Lura into his arms and followed. The back room was small, with a reinforced door. Corin sealed it just as the front door gave way with a deafening crash. Muffled voices shouted orders in the other room. For a moment, the pounding on the reinforced door stopped, replaced by a slow, deliberate knock. Then a voice, smooth and cold. "You have something that belongs to me." Ethan recognized the tone, calm but filled with threat. "Hand it over, and I'll let you walk out alive." Corin's voice was sharp. "You're not taking her." A low chuckle came from the other side. "I'm not asking." The door shuddered as a blast hit it, metal glowing where the impact struck. They didn't have long. Ethan looked at Corin. "Is there another way out?" Corin nodded toward a narrow hatch in the corner. "Leads to the old tunnels, but it's risky." The door took another hit, the frame bending. There was no more time to decide. Ethan climbed through the hatch first. Lura pressed against his chest. Corin followed, sealing it behind them. The tunnel was dark and smelled of rust and damp stone. Their footsteps echoed, the sound of shouting above fading as they moved deeper. Ethan's heart pounded, but every step forward felt like pulling away from the noose, tightening behind them. After several twists and turns, faint light appeared ahead. They emerged into an abandoned rail yard, the tracks warped and broken. Corin scanned the area, but before they could move, a figure stepped out from behind an old freight car. The same robed alien who had stood in the princess's chamber, his slit-like eyes narrowing. "I knew you'd come this way." Ethan's stomach dropped. "You," he muttered. The alien smiled thinly. "You think you're protecting her, human? But all you've done is delay the inevitable." He gestured. An armed mercenary stepped out from the shadows, surrounding them. Corin raised his blaster, but the alien held up a hand. "No need for blood, just hand her over and live." Ethan's grip on Lura tightened. "Not happening." The alien's smile vanished, his voice dropping into a hiss. "Then you die here." The first mercenary moved, but Ethan didn't wait. He swung the wrench with all his strength, catching the attacker off guard. Corin fired, dropping another. Chaos erupted, the sound of metal striking, energy blasts scorching the air. Ethan ducked behind a rail car, shielding Lura, then lunged forward, slamming into the robed alien. They fell hard, the alien clawing at Ethan's arms, but Ethan didn't let go. Corin's voice shouted somewhere in the fight. The mercenaries scattering as guards in palace armor burst into the yard, their weapons trained on the attackers, the princess herself leading them. Her golden eyes burned as she strode forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "Arrest them." The robed alien froze, his gaze snapping to her. "You think you've won." He spat. She didn't respond, only gestured for her guards to take him. Ethan stood, still catching his breath, Lura clinging to him. The princess walked up to him, her voice softer now. "You did more than I asked. You kept her safe against all odds." Ethan managed a tired smile. Guess I'm not just a mechanic anymore. She looked at him for a moment, then gave a rare smile. No, you're a friend of the crown. The weight of those words sank in as the guards secured the area. The danger for now was over, but Ethan knew the memory of this fight would stay with him. Later, back at the palace, Laura rested on her cushion, her glow warm and calm. The princess stood beside Ethan on the balcony, the city stretching out below. "You've earned a place here if you want it," she said. Ethan looked out at the horizon, thinking of his small workshop, the quiet streets, and the life he had left behind. Then he looked at Laura, and the answer came easily. "I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be."